Welcome into this Wednesday edition of Talk of Champions. I'm your host, Zach Berry. No Ben Garrett today, as you can see. My colleague, Jake Thompson, is here. Jake, good morning.
Morning, afternoon, good night, whatever time of day it is. It's a crazy time,
Yeah,
but happy to fill in for Ben. I know they're dealing with some stuff right now.
I guess I said morning. It is 1:15 local time. Time
I just
time
figured
is
I'd give you the Truman Show. Hello there.
time isn't real. Appreciate everybody being patient in the chat. I was a little tardy from running a couple errands, but we're here. We're going to talk a little football recruiting. We could probably talk a little baseball recruiting as more and more mock drafts are coming out. We're seeing more and more. Not really a surprise if you remember at the Ole Miss Spirit, the Ole Miss Spirit, OleMissSpirit.com, an affiliate of On3 and Rivals. We've talked about it ad nauseum with Cole Prosick and some of the other candidates in the class that are probably not going to make it to campus. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk a little baseball. We'll talk about the upcoming series this weekend in Oxford against Texas A&M, and kind of whatever else we run into. So, but let's start here, Jake. Last weekend, Ole Miss kicked things off with two commits to start the weekend in football. We'll talk about the basketball one here in a moment. I think the Taylon Mayo one, I wouldn't call it a surprise, but I didn't think he was going to commit at this point. But I think to get the weekend started with a blue chip 4-star guy with those kind of measurables is it's kind of indicative of what Pete Golding has looked for in the secondary, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest key is he's a guy that you can add in the secondary, which is where Pete has really worked, I think, to rebuild it, add depth. What they got those first two lines of the defense, but secondary, kind of like the offensive line on offense. So that's been the question mark of how far will this team go. And back end, the top of that defense is, we saw it. They just got tired, got worn out. Depth wasn't there in the Fiesta Bowl, and obviously we're not expecting Mayo to come in and be a starter to one next season. But you like where Pete's putting the focus is building from the back to the front. And like you said, that one kind of came out of nowhere. LRI got big, I think, when it popped on Friday. But no, that's a nice way to start to kind of keep building this class around, which obviously I know there's some other centerpieces they've got in there, but you like to see that one as a key defensive get.
Yeah. 6'3", 6'4", big kid, tall, long. I've heard a lot of people say that he could grow into a safety, depending on what kind of pounds he puts on in the weight room. I think he's going to stick at corner. I think he's got some legitimate corner skills. That's not something. Not everybody's made to play corner. You're out on an island by yourself. But I think his length and his speed is what sets him apart. And then obviously being so long and tall, he can make up for it. If he's a step or two slower than a wide receiver. But you look at the offer sheet, Jake, it's pretty loud. You got Texas, you got Oklahoma, you got Texas A&M, you got Southern Cal, Ohio State's on there, Florida, Oregon. I mean, he's pretty much got who's who on there. So a hell of a job by Pete, Brian Brown, Wes Neighbors, Jake Schoonover, kind of the whole staff to be able to not only lock him in for a couple visits, but to get him in this class, I think ahead of the summer is pretty big.
Yeah, you go into a kid from Texas, you go in and get him out of there, start keeping Texas, Oklahoma, where Animals is at A&M, who you're always going to contend with because they've got the money and the ways to recruit, and a USC where obviously they're trying to go, and everybody's suddenly saying this is their window to do something. So for Golding to come in and do what he's doing, and pull that out of Texas is a good start. You got to better about what he's going to be able to do, because I think recruiting together was going to be the question once filling in Lane there or replacing Lane.
Yeah, and sticking with the theme in the secondary, Ole Miss kept it going over the weekend. Got a second commitment, one that I think once you kind of flesh it out and kind of see where the staff is going here. I like it for several reasons. Mason Moore, another corner. He's out of Central High School in Baton Rouge, so right there in the shadows of Tiger Stadium. 3-star prospect. He's really good friends and really close with Easton Royal, who everybody knows, the 5-star wide receiver that Ole Miss is trying to flip from Texas. LSU is also trying. I think it's a 3-team race there, Jake. I don't think that's going to really shift much. I think it's going to be Texas, LSU, and Ole Miss. A lot of people think LSU has the better chance, but again, we've talked about it on the show. Easton continues to mention Ole Miss when asked about who is going to have the best chance to snag him from Texas. He brings it up. He brings up, obviously Frank Wilson, Pete Golding recruits Louisiana. And then I think he does truly have a really good connection with LaDamian Washington, Patrick Carter, Dante Moncrief. So it's a all hands on deck approach. I think I don't think we're going to get any kind of resolution there one way or another. I think it's going to go all the way to signing day. I know a lot of people were anticipating possibly a flip over the weekend just because of some, trying to follow some tea leaves with some tweets. But I think that one it's just my opinion. This isn't sourced or nobody told me, but I think he's going to go all the way to signing day. If he does flip, I think it'll be closer to signing day.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to want to quit kind of playing all the 3 teams, heavy hitters that you listed there. And they're all going to counter offer and counter punch again. To your point of the teams that Ole Miss is in there fighting for these guys with, it's good to see Ole Miss's name in there. And one, not only is it just, it's one of my 3, 4, 5 that he's saying in answers to guys that are talking to him, you or other people. So, and then the recruiting help that you rattled off there that Golden's got. I mean, he knew what to build around him and how to build around him. And Frank Wilson, we've seen his effect positively already with some. And so, he's going to be a valuable asset, especially in Louisiana, because I don't think that's going to go away in the recruiting wise. It's going to be a Miss LSU for a lot of these kids for a lot of different reasons. And have Frank on this side of the line is a positive for Pete.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I had people asking about in the chat about how the visit went. It obviously went great. Visits very rarely, if ever, go poorly. He's not going to do a ton of interviews. He's not going to talk a lot. He's going to be pretty guarded with what he is saying. He honestly, if you kind of go back and look at some of the interviews he's done with like Chad Simmons or Steve Wiltfong or Sam Spiegelman, he kind of says the same thing. Relationships are great. He likes all 3 schools. I think the attention and, financial, kind of commitment that Texas made up front turned his head a little bit because when he committed in November, I think it kind of caught everybody by surprise. And that's not to diminish what Texas does as a program and recruiting. They obviously recruit well, but I think the sudden commitment, I think a lot of people thought he would take it into his senior year and kind of hear everyone out. But yeah, it's certainly something to monitor. I know people kind of scoff when you talk about a Louisiana kid, especially if LSU wants them. It's hard to get. I mean, you saw LSU pick up a commitment from 5-star tight end Ahmad Hudson. Ole Miss was kind of in on him early, but a lot of people thought he might leave the state and go to Nebraska, which was kind of interesting. Matt Rule in Nebraska, they haven't been great since he got there. And hell, Nebraska hasn't been good since, Bo Pelini was there. But there was a lot of buzz about Nebraska and Ahmad Hudson, who's from Ruston, Louisiana. He was going to, potentially leave. LSU gets the early commitment there. Speaking of commitments, Jake, let's kind of pivot a little bit, and then we'll get into another segment here. I do think Ole Miss is probably going to get another commitment soon in this 2027 class. Our very own Steve Wiltfong entered an RPM pick, and then I followed up as well after talking with some people around here. I do think Brentwood Academy quarterback Cruz Jenkins is potentially joining this class very soon. He's not going to wow you measurables wise, but I've seen him in person several times. It's cliche. I think it's on point though with him. He's just a ball player. He's about 5'11", about 175, 180 pounds, but he can just play. He's got sneaky good arm talent. He can really spin it for a guy that's not super big. But I think this is just, one of those things you got to do in recruiting in high school, right? You got to get 2 quarterbacks if you can to continue to have that depth. You never know what's going to happen in this era with the portal and guys jumping in, leaving, trying to go find somewhere else to play. Right now you've got obviously Trinidad Chambliss, and then you've got Deuce Knight, who's kind of been crowned as the heir apparent. But then, hey, you've got, AJ Maddox, you've got Reese Wise, who just signed. I think if you're bringing Keegan Croucher in as someone you think can be the face of your program and can really take this offense to the next level, I think Cruz Jenkins is a hell of a guy to bring in as a quote backup or, second fiddle, whatever you want to say. And that's not a slight to him. It's just, obviously Keegan Croucher has the cachet. He's the bigger name, Lead 11 finalist. He'll be down in LA at the end of the month. I'll be there to see him compete and try to get a spot. They're going to do it kind of the old school way, Jake. They're going to do the finals, and then they're going to pick the final 11, and then those guys will go compete in the opening in Oregon again. So they're taking it back over to Beaverton. I do think Ole Miss lands him. I think it's Vandy and South Florida, the other finalists. I think he's going to snub the hometown team, and I think he'll commit to Ole Miss some point soon. He might do it while we're on this show.
To your point, I've seen the comments. I don't know why my mic is not happy with StreamYard today. Sorry about that. But for those who can hear this, we kind of had a quote unquote pre-production meeting there beforehand. We talked about, nobody had heard of Trinidad Chambliss until about this time last year when he signed, and we still didn't know what he could do. But you had him in the room, and look what happened come Kentucky last year. And what he's done since, and what he is for Ole Miss, it's you just don't know what they're going to be. Who's going to be what, and who's going to pan out, and who's not, and who's going to surprise. So getting stocking up QBs is never a bad thing, especially life in the SEC, and you know what's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was at that game last year in Lexington. Obviously, there was a lot of buzz. There was a lot of hype around Austin Simmons after what he did in the Georgia game, where he came in when Dart got hurt. Drove the offense right down the field against Georgia, scored. I think everybody expected him to kind of be the next big thing. And look, everybody did. I mean, you look at national recruiting analysts and scouts, and, everybody had him highly ranked. Everybody thought that he was going to be, the next big thing. And it just didn't work. And I don't think that's, the book isn't over on Austin Simmons. He's at Missouri now. We'll see how he looks this year. But yeah, I mean, I think you saw it in that game where Austin didn't look great. He had a couple picks. Then he had the injury to the ankle and the lower leg, and then Trinidad comes in. He kind of iced the game away, right? He had a couple zone reads, and he kind of put the game, on ice there late with a little first down run to put Kentucky away, and then the rest is kind of history, as they say, Jake. But yeah, I mean, I think you just have to be prepared. I think that's the biggest thing, is just having a plan. I think Joe Judge's background as an NFL head coach and a guy that's been in those war rooms in the NFL. I think that, backup quarterback is a big thing in the NFL, obviously. You have to be prepared. Those guys have to be ready. And look, Trinidad was ready. I mean, a lot of credit goes to Joe, to Charlie Weiss Jr., to that offensive staff to have him ready, because he arrived pretty late. He arrived in the spring, so he didn't have a ton of time. And a lot of credit goes to Trinidad too, because he has to go out and execute. But yeah, I mean, I think this is I think it's going to be a really good pickup. And then look, you kind of have to also look at it twofold, where Brentwood Academy, great program, one of the best historically great programs in Tennessee football. Tennessee high school football, and they have a lot of talent there. and it's not the worst thing to snag the quarterback that's the face of that program right now.
Yeah, no, quarterback is is that star position everybody looks at, flash you get. So if you can land him, that's a good get. Add Keegan to build around for the future. And these guys know that they may have a guaranteed extra year if that 5-for-5 works out. So it's not like you may have a guy who's just going to play a year and move on. You may have a chance to play a couple years. So quarterback is with it. I like the fuss there. But to your point, if I'm Pete Golding, I trust whatever the judge tells me. The experience and now the proof of concept with what he's done with Trinidad and how prepared him, and just sitting in Pittsburgh listening to him give a X's and O's clinic, about quarterback camp in school, what he needs, and all this and that. And it was eye-opening. So if I'm Pete, whatever Joe says, I do. I'm sure John Day Baker's agreeing with that mindset as well.
Yeah, I saw on the board earlier today somebody kind of threw out a comp for Cruz Jenkins. They mentioned Damon Williams. I don't hate that at all. That's kind of a pretty good comp. Similar frame. I would probably argue Damon is a little bit more explosive than Cruz, but Cruz can run. He's very elusive, so he's definitely mobile. Actually, in fact, kind of put a bow on this one before we move on to the next segment. Keegan Croucher and Cruz Jenkins will play week 1 in Chattanooga. I'll be there for that one. I anticipate a lot of people will be there for that one because they want to see Keegan Croucher and Baylor. And then obviously David Gabriel George, the running back, 5-star prospect who is in the backfield with Keegan Croucher at Baylor, big-time Ole Miss target, Ohio State, Georgia, Tennessee going after him as well. So that'll be a marquee matchup for week 1, must-see TV up there in Chattanooga. So, all right, there was another commitment over the weekend. It was a big one. If you've been on our message board, you've seen the groveling. You've seen a little bit of some impatience, a little bit of frustration. But Chris Beard and company got a commitment from Santiago Truitt, Arizona State, power forward, wing, whatever you want to call him. I think he's probably going to be more of a 4, but he can stretch a little bit. He's athletic, 6'11". Played a lot for Arizona State last year. I think he started every game but one. He's a Argentinian prospect. He originally started his career at San Diego, then went to Arizona State. I talked on Rebel Yell on Monday. The word that I got from folks was Arizona was trying to bring him in, kind of a little crosstown there, just make the jump from Tempe to Tucson. I think Tommy Lloyd and them were looking at him as a depth piece for the front court. I think Santiago wants to be more of a focal point of a team, and I think that's what Chris Beard and Ole Miss sold to him was, hey, you can come here and start. You can be a guy. Whereas, you'd be a 6-man or someone at the end of the bench over in Tucson. So good pickup for Ole Miss. I like the I like the potential there for a guy that can not only defend, but he can get out and run. He can shoot a little bit from deep. He's not going to be super deadly from 3-point range, but he can shoot it a little. But someone that I think can rim run and give you something on the defensive end.
Yeah, to your point, we all saw this past season, outside that week in Nashville in March, and then 9 departures from this past team. If you're a guy, you're going to start for this Ole Miss squad and come this fall. Beard needs 5 guys, so if you impress and can be a guy, this is where you should come. Because I just don't see them having another season like they did. I don't think Chris Beard wants that on his record, and I think he's heard plenty of from the people who have fund, these rosters that they don't need the kind of misses on a lot of the guys that they had. So that was a pickup on them. I like on paper so far what they've added. It was a little slow to start, but that was a nice shot in the arm. I like what they have to build around Patton Pickens and Elias, who stuck around as well. So it's going to be another whole new look to this team, but I think that's just the NIL life. But I think Beers probably feel a little bit better to stick his head up out of the office this week and maybe not get some jeers or lose them this time.
Yeah. I mean, on paper, a pretty solid group. Not going to wow you in terms of rankings by any means, but look at the front court. We've talked about Truitt, You get Stefan Chiswick, who, somebody asked me on the board the other day. The school has not officially announced him yet, but I think it's heading in that direction. That's kind of how we have to operate right now, Jake, because Beard's keeping things pretty tight-lipped over there at the Tui Center, so we're not having a lot of discourse with folks over there. But you got 2'6'11" guy. I mean, I'd probably say Stefan's probably closer to 7 foot. And then I really like I like the Roman. I think it's Salipa, the kid out of Pitt, very athletic wing. I think someone who can give you a little bit of everything. He can get down, he can rebound, he can defend, but I think he can also get out on the perimeter and defend as well and shoot a little bit. I think we're going to look back, maybe in January or February and be pretty excited about Adam Clark. I think him playing the one, taking over the point guard role. So Patton Pinkins and Ilias Commerdine can be off the ball is big. And then, Christian Brown, obviously JMU, a guy that box score is not going to blow you away, but can really defend, can really block some shots. And then Desir Haskins is kind of the, kind of tweener, could be, diamond in the rough, if you will, with all the cliches and bad sayings there for sports. But I like, 6'6", 6'7". He's from Camden. He's from New Jersey, so he's tough. From a good high school program and played well for St. Joe's. I think he's going to give you some flexibility. But, yeah, I mean, I think in a perfect world, Ole Miss would like to add a couple more. I think if you made me guess, I think they're going to want to go get a scorer, someone that can really shoot it. I think they're going to need a little bit more emphasis on the offensive side, because I think right now you can look at this class that's coming in and you see a lot of defense.
Yeah, no, it's Beard liked, to your point, when we finally had him to kind of talk to us last week, or, as you put it, he's been very quiet since stuff wrapped up in Nashville for them, but he's very high on Adam Clark, Bud Clark, whatever he might go by, and alluded to what you said and told me that frees up Patton. He wants to pair him and Elias together, likes what there's kind of offense he can kind of do. And with Roman Silepa, I'm hoping that rugby background, it's a limited background, but I'm hoping that rugby background from back home in Australia allows him to be able to kind of go shoulder to shoulder, be a rebound guy in this kind of tough SEC league where you need a rebound guy, a big dude that can bounce around, and also a guy that can eat up fouls in a positive way, get some other guys in foul trouble, and be kind of present. So I like it on paper, but of course, as we've said and the board has said, past week or so, the paper looked good last year, so we've got to see it. And I think we'll get an idea around Thanksgiving, I think, once this roster is made up, because I think, as far as I know, they're still heading to Maui, so they'll play some decent teams, and that'll be the first litmus test before January rolls around.
Yeah, obviously we know Beard, his background with defense, he wants guys that can defend. I think it's been made pretty clear in the the tenure since he arrived in Oxford. If you're not going to defend, you're not going to play. So I think that's something that you got to recruit to. It's a culture that you got to build. And I think he found some guys that are going to be willing to do that. As far as if anybody has any questions about who they're looking at, I really don't know right now. I mean, obviously you've got Devin Williams hanging out there. Almost had a Zoom meeting with him. He went to Tucson. He went to Arizona, did a visit there. Not a lot of buzz out of that visit from some of the national people I spoke to. They said, hey, maybe he ends up sticking there. Arizona obviously went to the Final Four. Tommy Lloyd's got a good thing going over there. They're going to need some front court help. Koa Pete, declared for the NBA draft. He could come back. I want to say I would be shocked if he came back. I think he could use another year because he's kind of a tweener in terms of like the NBA game. But if he doesn't come back, then I think I think Tommy Lloyd and his staff probably have a good idea of where Koa is sitting right now. So maybe they make a push to bring Devin Williams in, but a center from FAU, big guy, another defender, guy that blocks a ton of shots. I think he finished 5th in the country in blocks last year. think he had 85 blocks, if I remember that correctly, last year. I can pull it up here, but a guy that was a big time prospect coming out of high school. Yeah, he was fifth in the country in blocks per game and total blocks. Averaged 7.5 points, 5.2 rebounds at FAU. And you lose James Scott. It was a big loss for Ole Miss. I mean, right there in the final hour of the portal closing, he ends up leaving, ends up going to Georgia. But yeah, Devin Williams is someone that I think is a winner. Played at Centennial High School in California. Helped them win back-to-back Southern Section Open Division titles. And yeah, he was a 58th overall prospect in that class in 2023. So lengthy athletic dude that could certainly help you in the post in terms of defense and getting to the rim and scoring. So I will say this real quick, Jake, just to clear it up. I've had people in the chat are asking about Reese Wise and Demarius Yates. We're not really going to talk about that. I mean, look, it's young kids, making a bad decision. We've all been there. It happens. We're not really going to touch on that. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. There's really nothing to say. Just two young kids, freshman year of college, that just made a bad decision. It's fine. I'm sure they'll handle that internally, and we'll go from there. All right, let's talk baseball. I watched a good bit of last weekend's series against Arkansas. First game, you just kind of get run out of the building a little bit. Hunter Elliott really struggling last couple starts. Saturday, kind of more of the same. I know Cade Townsend didn't look great against Georgia, but man, he was just on one against Arkansas. Phenomenal. Bats were alive. And then Sunday, just had a lead late. And then, honestly, it was it kind of shocked me with Walker Hooks. He's been, I wrote about it this morning. He's been dialed in. He's looked great in the later innings of games. Just left one up a little bit. Arkansas hits the walk-off. So heading into this weekend against Texas A&M, a really good program at home, which, Ole Miss has kind of been on the road for a little over a week. They played in Pearl, then they go to Fayetteville. So what are you kind of expecting? How do you think this team's going to bounce back heading into this weekend against Texas A&M?
I think they'll respond. I think the bats may have found something. Of course, you sit for a week and you kind of lose that momentum in the midweek due to graduation or exam, and then leading into graduation this weekend. So no mid game this week. They just got off. The thing for me is I would assume they're not going to make a change because I think we would have heard something by now or been taught something. I don't think they in terms of the starter rotation, I think Hunter gets another crack at Friday. I know some probably or a lot may disagree with that, but I think if they don't move him this week, they're not moving him because then next week's a short week with everybody's starting on Thursday through Saturday, so you can't really not make a move and give him short rest from there. So it's that's what I need to see is a Hunter that can not in a hole that I did not watch Friday. I kept up with it on Twitter, so I saw scores, but I did not see him. But it looked like he just didn't have it, as they say in baseball. I wouldn't say arm tiredness because I don't think that's it. He struggled last few weeks, but they're hitting the crutch of the schedule where the offense that you can't play with fire. You get away with it maybe with the scuffle, as we've seen now. Not very good LSU, a Kentucky team kind of floundered, so you could kind of flirt with it in that stretch, but now you're getting the Georgias, A&M's, and then Alabama that was ranked 9 weeks ago, and now they're one of the top teams in the SEC. So that's another one that you can't really play with fire. And Hunt's played with fire, gotten burned more times than not. And that's the problem is then you're putting all the stress on Cade, who seems to love it on Saturdays. And he'll sit there and tell people he wants to take their soul. So he's all about be a guy on Saturday. But the question is, if the struggles continue, you get to a regional and you're on the road somewhere, do you make a switch and make Cade your Friday guy, and then maybe see if Hunter can get that win on Saturday? Because I also don't think Taylor Ray does a Saturday guy. He's been down as well. It's looked okay, but you don't want to make that move and one of his bad appearances come when you're up 1-0 in a regional, and then you get sent down to lose back down 2 of your arms. So I think it is what it is. That's the biggest thing that's the bats are the bats. We've said all we can say. You've said it. Everybody said it. They're going to be hot and cold. That's just what it was, or how it is for this offense. It's the pitching that was so good that has now struggled as May ended or April ended. Now got to May. So that's my biggest concern because, as we know, Gohorovic and some other guys on A&M's team can flat out send that ball to talk if they want to. So that's going to be the biggest key this weekend.
Yeah, we mentioned Cade Townsend. At this point, can't really talk about Cade without talking about the MLB draft. Prep Baseball, who I think does a phenomenal job covering high school, college. They do a lot of mock draft stuff. I'm a big fan of what they do. They put out a mock draft this morning, yesterday. And if you're an Ole Miss fan, you kind of have to avert your eyes here a little bit, or I guess your ears, since we're in an auditory platform. But in Prep Baseball's mock draft, they have Taj Marshane, the shortstop out of James Island, who has just absolutely rocketed up some boards. He is taken at 18 overall by the Reds. He's a dude. I mean, this is just kind of one of those things, man. It just is such a bummer about college baseball, where Ole Miss, I think, got his commitment like 2 years ago, maybe. Really good high school player at the time, but I mean, now power numbers are up. He's been really physical at the plate. He's hit a lot of long balls, and then just smooth in the field. Him going top 20 is pretty surprising. I mean, it's not a knock on Taj, but he hasn't been mocked that high from what I've seen. And then if you go a little bit further down, you've got Cade Townsend at 23 to the Cubs. And then, ho-hum, number 26, you've got Cole Prosick from Magnolia Heights going to the Atlanta Braves, which, hey, I wouldn't hate that as a Braves fan. But there's some big hits there. It's kind of expected at this point. I mean, I know a lot of people have said, hey, they've said this, they've said that. They want to play in college. When these guys are going top 40, top 30, it's pretty hard to say no. But I'll tell you this, Jake. I was talking to a former Ole Miss player about this, and we were discussing pro baseball versus NIL era, and whether or not to go to the pros or to kind of bet on yourself, and maybe even not bet on yourself as much as like, hey, look at the money that you're potentially getting in college, where it's like, 3 years of minor league ball versus SEC ball is how my buddy put it. Like you can, like Bianco and Carl Lafferty can make a pitch of like, hey, like the experience you're getting in the SEC, the competition you're going to face, the development that we can show you. I mean, look at Jacob Gonzalez. He's now getting up to where he's about to get called up to the White Sox, if he hasn't already. I think you can make that. Like that's almost like, high A ball, if you will, to play in the SEC. I mean, you look at the standings for the SEC this year, and I mean, there are some really good teams that are under 500 in the conference and are probably going to host. And that's just how good the SEC is. But, what do you think about that, and like kind of the pitch of 3 years in the minors where you're on a bus and you're, major league style, like cramped in a coach bus, and you're having to go play in, I don't know, Broken Arrow, Oklahoma or whatever, versus getting on a chartered flight, playing for an SEC program, playing in front of 10 to 15,000 people week in, week out. What is that a realistic thing that Ole Miss and others can pitch to try to keep kids in school instead of jumping straight to the pros?
Yeah, no, I think you look at Hunter Elliott as case in point. He's probably he was drafted 2 years ago. I think last round, didn't like it, came back, took his name out during the draft, so his name kind of stayed there, but teams knew it was coming back this year. So that case where that bus life is not as enticing, it's not as romantic as it once was when you're talking about life in the minors, because now you got the ability to make more money, stay in the bed that you've been sleeping in, perform practice, play in the facilities you're used to. And I think also, case in point for pitchers, you got Joe Mangrum, who just came from the minors, who was considered one of the better pitching development programs with the Guardians, who is now at Ole Miss and can develop you, and I'm sure is using what he did in the minor system of the Guardian system here. So that is a massive, I think, point A. I mean, I know that's just for pitchers, but doesn't hurt to try to do that to them. And Joel May can also just give them advice. If you're a hitter or a position player of what's life like up there, and do you think I need to come in and let y'all develop me? And and I'm going to throw this to you because people kind of counterpointed on the board today, which I didn't think about, honestly, because the Red Sox are so bad. I hadn't thought about pro baseball this year. But the lockout next year, I mean, is that a reasonable argument that schools can use? I don't know how that works, to that extent, but I feel like that is something that Mike and other teams can say, hey, we don't know if there will be baseball come late March next year, and there will be a college baseball season in February.
Yeah, that's a great point. I've had people ask me that same question. I'm not going to pretend to know the ins and outs of Major League Baseball, and if there's a lockout, I mean, who knows? I certainly don't. But no, I mean, yeah, you could absolutely use that because, when I was talking to my buddy who played at Ole Miss, played at UAB, we talk about this, seems like every day, with how you can compare, an NIL contract versus a pro contract. You get your signing bonus. How does that compare to, let's say you sign with Ole Miss, you show up to campus, you make 250, 300 your first year, you make 400, 450 your second year. And then by the time it's time for you to look at getting drafted, you're making 500 to 600. That money year over year, it's pretty comparable. I think a lot of kids coming out, it's their goal. They want to play in the bigs. They want to make it on a pro team. But I do think, as my buddy pointed out, he said, college baseball, like the perception of college baseball has changed. It's very different. There are so many guys that are getting to the bigs within 2 years. You don't have to worry about the minor leagues and getting on those terrible bus rides and doing all those trips and being in motels and, eating ramen, where, hey, maybe you go and play in the SEC for 2 years or 3 years, and then you get taken in the top 40. I know we just went through a mock draft where these guys are all getting taken in the top 40, but that's not a guarantee. It's just a mock draft. Like the old adage of, hey, it only takes one team to really love you, and then they're going to draft you. There's, that kind of thing. But I do think it is, it's probably something that we should talk more about, maybe write about, just the SEC or college versus going pro. Because look, you've seen it, I've seen it. You've probably talked to people about it at the games. You probably talked to Chase or Neil. Because I know Neil's a big Major League Baseball guy. Chase is a big baseball guy. It's harder to win with the portal with non-power 4 guys now. There's some exceptions, but when the supply versus the demand, it's hard to put together a team like that. Like, you have to go take a chance on a guy like Tristan Becerra, who was at a power 4 school but didn't play a lot, didn't really do much. Ole Miss rolls the dice. It's paid off, right? He's got 19 home runs. He's had a little bit of a skid late, but he's played really well. You have to take those chances. But like, if you can use NIL, like my buddy posed the question of, like, could you do like a 3-year contract with a guy and use NIL money or funds for these draft risk guys to, hey, we're going to give you this, your quote contract to come here. How is that even doable or feasible? I don't know. I mean, baseball is still very much a niche sport. A lot of schools don't make any money off of it. I mean, Ole Miss is one of the very few. I think you could probably count on one hand, Jake, how many schools actually make a profit off college baseball. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a question. I mean, maybe you can throw that around in the press box this weekend and see what people say. But I'd be interested to hear what some of the big time baseball, whether that's, guys at D1, Baseball America, prep baseball, whomever, would possibly think, because with the lockout and then NIL being more prevalent for baseball, it maybe Ole Miss looks into doing that.
Yeah, I think overall, unless you're a sure thing like a Roman Anthony or the kid the Pirates called up, whose name is escaping me, I think it is at least makes you think about it more. Your options, it is maybe closer to 50-50, unless you're just a
Yeah.
sure thing, or the
Connor
team
Griffin,
comes to you saying, "Hey, give it a few months, then we'll call you up. We got to wait." I think that kind of fish hook dangles there, and that's something I think that should be asked about, and probably will be once this season down, but it probably not get kicked up again until October when this pro baseball season ends, and we don't know what's happening in a few months after that. So it is going to be interesting, and for Ole Miss, it would probably be a positive, because I know everybody's frustrated, but you would prefer to recruit these kids that are good at the MLB, things can pay now or develop now in the minors and be called up than kids that nobody's sniffing. I mean, the optics go both ways in that. So I think it's a positive that they're still in on these kids that are considered future potential top talent in the MLB.
Yeah, I mean, I know it doesn't really matter or count, if you will, but I mean, look at the scouting and the recruiting that Ole Miss has done, and like the guys that didn't make it. I mean, I know you don't get credit for those guys because they didn't come to school, but I think it speaks to what Ole Miss is doing. I mean, you gotta keep, it's a volume shooter game. You gotta get these kids. It's the lottery ticket that everybody else wants. LSU had the lottery ticket for Connor Griffin. He was never going to go to college, but you at least had it in case, like Gunnar Hoagland, like everybody thought he was going pro, ended up coming to school. Ole Miss wins out, has the lottery ticket there. Years ago, you had Sinquez Golson, who many thought was, going to go play for the Red Sox, and he ended up, hey, I want to go play two sports at Ole Miss. I mean, that worked out. You had the lottery ticket, so it's tough. Especially like you said, a lot of these kids Ole Miss finds when they're 14, 15 years old, and then they grow, they get stronger, bigger, faster, and then they blow up, and then what can you do? I will give a shout out to Cole Prosick. He leads the country in home runs. I think a lot of people know that. He's at 17. Another thing here, Jake, pretty cool. 3 of the top 10 are from Mississippi in the country.
People sleep on, but Magnolia Heights, they quietly churn out some good baseball talent up there.
Yeah, that's a factory over there. But you had Caden Lowry from Wayne Academy. Do you know where Wayne Academy is?
If it's in Wayne County, I do. If there's a different Wayne Academy, then I don't.
Okay.
Public school history only gets me so far when it gets to the private schools.
I can Google it here as we have a computer right here in front of us. Yeah, it does look like it's in Waynesboro. Yeah, I'd never heard of it.
And yes, I do know where that is.
Okay. Yeah, I'd never heard of Wayne Academy until I looked at who was leading the country in home runs. And then Brody Wilson from Tupelo is 7th in the country. He's at 14. Prosick's got 17. He might have more than that, as Magnolia Heights is currently in the playoffs. But, yeah, pretty cool Mississippi baseball. Because, look, we hadn't talked about him. He's committed to Vanderbilt, but Eric Booth Jr., I think he's from Oak Grove. Prep Baseball has him going top 10 to the Pirates. So that's pretty wild. So obviously we're not really breaking any news here that there's a ton of talent in the state of Mississippi for baseball. There's always been talent. But yeah, Eric Booth Jr. from Oak Grove, he's going 5th overall to the Pirates. So you'd have Connor Griffin and him potentially playing together if that's where the Pirates go. But yeah, it's a tough gig. I don't envy that position at all for Bianco and Carl Lafferty, Mike Clement, Joel Mangrum. I mean, that's hard to do when battling the draft and the money, and it's tough.
Yeah, no, I'm sure the antacids get popping a lot, once July rolls around and that draft hits, because it's the same song every year. And it's a good song and it's a bad song at the same time. It just is what it is. But we'll see if good news comes their way this July, then they can sit back and say, "Oh, hey, we called it on May the 6th." The potential lockout. Ole Miss. I mean, we had an armchair quarterback it back in.
Yeah. All right. It's going to do it here. This Wednesday edition. Appreciate Jake coming in out of the bullpen. Has been was not able to make it, but our best wishes to Ben and his family. Difficult time, but I'm sure he'll be back later this week with another show. As always, Jake will be in the booth over at Swayze Field, Ole Miss, Texas A&M this weekend, and then, like you said, it'll be Thursday, Friday, Saturday next weekend because the regular seasons are almost over, which is insane. So
Yeah,
we'll have
I had to book a hotel for Hoover. I forgot what month it was already. It snuck up on me. So yeah, we'll be SEC tournament in here soon.
Yeah, that April just didn't even exist. It just flew by. Yeah, Jake will have wall-to-wall coverage for baseball this weekend. I'll be handling portal recruiting as we teased here on the show. I do think Ole Miss football will be adding another commit sometime soon. I don't know how imminent, but probably pretty soon. And then Chris Beard and company are going to be still working the portal, trying to fill out that roster. Speaking of, you can go read Jake's. He had an in-depth conversation with Chris Beard. It's good stuff. Chris was kind enough to give us plenty of time, and he went into kind of filling out the roster versus finding some assistance. He's going player first, so you can read that at the Ole Miss Spirit, omspirit.com. Plenty of stuff over there, football wise. We've got a lot of stuff. Ben had several content items go up talking about Trinidad. A lot of bowl projections were being thrown around. I don't really agree with those at all. But yeah, you can read all of that at the Ole Miss Spirit, omspirit.com. Appreciate you, Jake. We'll do it again soon. Maybe when if the lockout does happen, we can take a victory lap on the show.
Yeah, and I try to get my AOL dial-up connection with the audio here. So apologies for probably 75% of the words y'all may not have heard. They really thought out and good, I promise. So appreciate Zach letting me fill in today.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what it is. You didn't sound like that in the pre-show and prep work.
I will say, for whatever it is, my mic likes Zoom. My mic doesn't like what we're using. It's not a bash of any product. It's just I'm too dumb to know why.
Well, it wasn't that bad. So we appreciate everybody in the chat chiming in. As always, it's good to see everybody to come join the live show. But that's going to do it for Talk of Champions. Like I said, stay locked in, omspirit.com. Lots of content going up over there. Appreciate Jake. Appreciate you all. And we'll do it again soon. Until next time, we out of here.